So there's a bunch of people that may claim like they know people. However, realistically speaking, they don't know people. They don't know anyone, regardless if someone knows themselves or doesn't know themselves. They don't know anyone more than somebody knows themselves. They just may be conditioning people or convincing people that they know some people to then make things appear to be a certain narrative. However, that narrative is not true based. That narrative is false based. That narrative has nothing to do with reality. That notion that they keep repeating in like this conditioned, repetitive way is lie based because obviously somebody has to continuously convince, continuously make somebody believe something that is not true. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So that's what some people are doing. They're trying to do everything to make things appear or seem like they have everything figured out. Like they know who a person is, to basically use excuses to justify some type of doings on those people. So those people can basically not understand their true power, and in not understanding their true power, give their power to somebody else for somebody else to manipulate them. So that's realistically what's going on. What's taking place is not one thing, is many, many things. And in those many, many things, there's a bunch of lie-based things that are going against reality, and this primarily has to do with lack of knowledge. So it's not about somebody not knowing yourself, whether you lack knowledge or you don't lack knowledge. Because regardless, whether you lack knowledge or you don't lack knowledge, no one has the authority to deceive you, to dupe you, to convince you, to make you believe things that don't pertain to you. So in this day and age, even here right now, people have, in a fixed, devolved way, tried to condition me, try to continuously manipulate me to make me believe that somehow they know me. And they try to deter me and they try to basically take me away from my path. All this stuff that they ever done is basically they have lack of knowledge. They are living in fear. So then, with their lack of knowledge, with them living in fear, trying to flip the script, trying to do the opposite to make people believe that somehow they have everything figured out, and so somehow that other people don't know themselves, other people are somehow lacking knowledge. So it's basically a bunch of the totality of everything is basically a bunch of lack of understanding people, one not knowing the the truth from the other, is attempting to fool his or herself to make other people believe that they know the truth, that they have all the answers, and are only able to convince people that this is the case or this is the truth based on lies. In other words, everything that has ever occurred on this planet, with this play out that is occurring here in this day and age, Either it's truth based, either it's lie based, or either it's a mix of lie and truth based stuff. So that's what's technically realistically occurring. So don't. It's a good idea to know who you are, know your true knowledge, true self, and who you are. At the same time, it's a good idea to be aware and not allow other people to claim to think that they know you better than you know yourself. Because some people, what they do is they spy on you. They are basically embedded in your life that have no reason to be in your life and should not be in your life. If this wasn't enough, some people understand that fact and stop immediately in what they're doing once they realize that they are basically wrong. And then there's nonsensers that continue. They continue. So at one point, it's like it's a good idea to know your true knowledge, know who you are, so somebody else won't attempt to deceive you or trick you. And at the same time, those whom try to trick you, try to deceive you, to make you believe all sorts of things in a given moment, are basically deceived and tricked themselves. Because if they weren't tricked and deceived themselves, they would not put their tentacles in somebody else's life. They would not do that. They would not make things seem that things are in a way where they know you. So it just seems like, and you know what's fascinating to me? While I'm mentioning this, there's a bunch of liars floating around and causing issues in sophisticated ways, trying to undermine the truth. There's people that know exactly what they're doing, and there's people that have no idea what the heck they're doing, yet they're doing it anyway. That's dangerous. They have no idea what they're doing, yet they're doing it anyway, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because they're basically assuming, they're jumping into judgment, and they're not getting the story straight, and they're continuing in a path of nonsense because they don't want the truth to be out. They want to suppress people because they know once the truth is out, they're basically effed. The truth is out, they are effed, yet they want to, it's like an onion layer, the inception. They want to make me believe that somehow the truth is not out, but they're not effed. You know, I don't agree with their nonsense game, so they just got exposed on my behalf. All liars on my behalf will lose. If a liar claims to be beating me in a lie-based way, don't believe them. It's not going to work. That's not how truth works. You cannot win a race cheating. There's two people racing and somebody cheats and says, "Oh, I won the race. I won the race." You don't win the race. You lost the race. You just claim that you won. And you convinced a bunch of people that you won until somebody else gets the other side of the story and then says, "Oh, wait, you cheated. You didn't win." So that's the problem with these liars. They claim Oh, I won, I won, I won. They go all the way, like for long they can. Until then, people realize what's going on. They're like, okay, well, let's hear the other side of the story. And then they realize, obviously, that they lost. So it's a good idea. It's a good rule of thumb to also keep in mind that there is not one side to a story, not two sides to a story. However, all sides of the story. All sides of the story will be accurate. One side of the story, two sides of the story will not be accurate, never. So even these mainstream medias, these news stations, you always hear them and talk about how there's only one side of the story. They just report and say certain things. How many people are they able to dupe, deceive? The fact of the matter is that they should not be able to dupe and deceive anyone. Everything has to be with a purpose. And at the same time, people should be educated and aware that they are basically being deceived because so long they believe something, they don't ask questions, they'll give room for other people to continuously deceive or dupe or manipulate. So it's not about being deceived. It's not about not being educated. It's about being educated. It's about being aware. It's about learning true knowledge. It's about knowing yourself better than I know you, knowing yourself better than anyone knows you. And just because you don't, that still doesn't give people the opportunity to deceive you or to trick you or to manipulate you or take advantage of you. Why? Because what they're doing has nothing to do with opportunity. That's a misuse of truth. So, in the midst of all this, in the totality of all this, and what's going on is the fact that there is a bunch of people embedded in people's lives, spying on people's lives, duping people, conditioning people, trying to make them believe or think that somehow they know what's best for you. No one knows what's best for me. There's not one person on this planet that can say, "Oh, I know what's best for you." They can tell me, "Hey, this." They can give me a suggestion. They can say, "Hey, we may think that this may be good for you. We may think that this is best for you." However, they cannot convince me. They cannot condition me. They cannot dupe me. They cannot make me believe in this repetitive way to make me think, to make me understand, to make me know, to think that somehow this is the answer and this is what is good for me. Because that's when they're wrong. No one knows what's best for me. No one can convince me otherwise. Why? Because I know myself. I know myself more than somebody else knows me, more than somebody claims to know me, more than somebody claims to think that they know me. So it's a good idea. It's a good perspective and understanding in general to get to know yourself. However, remember, just because you don't know yourself doesn't equal that somebody manipulates or takes advantage of you, because they are in the wrong. So, very, very good rule of thumb is to make sure and ensure that you learn true knowledge within yourself. One of the key factors in knowing true knowledge is to get rid of every form of nonsense thing that you may be involved in. In doing so, no one can try to manipulate you or take advantage of you. Anyone that attempts to must be noted, must be known, and must be stopped and prevented. Because I remember from a while ago that I went through many, many processes within myself, and a bunch of lack of understanding nonsensers arrived in my life and tried to condition me, tried to dupe me, tried to convince me that somehow they know what's best for me. In other words, there was a bunch of groups. They try to pull you in their midst, in their direction. And realistically, they have no business doing that because they have no business messing with free will. When somebody is truthful, when somebody's trying to figure things out, when somebody's trying to do things based on what they understand to be true and what they're trying to do in terms of seeking what truth is, no one can attempt to try to manipulate, try to take advantage, try to change the narrative, or try to make people join or be involved in their groups in terms of duping them or stooping them down. All this stuff is exactly what I went through, what I realized, what I noticed, and all this stuff is the problem. Because a bunch of people don't know what the truth is, they leave a lot of room for a bunch of other people to manipulate people and take advantage of people. I haven't explained myself to a bunch of people, and those bunch of people that I haven't explained myself to because they're not aware of everything, they think somehow I'm wrong. So even right now, while I'm mentioning something, I got sidetracked with. Well, I didn't get sidetracked. There was some type of a thing that occurred, and some people try to change the narrative while I'm saying something. This is bogus stuff, man. Literally, while I'm trying to explain the fact that what somebody needs to do to learn true knowledge, some people are tampering with people in the process, basically, and this is illegal. They cannot tamper with anybody in the process, so whomever is doing so is a problem. Whomever at that very moment of time, about 30 seconds ago, 40 seconds ago, gave me a nonsense vision and a nonsense thought needs to lose power. Because they have no idea what they're doing. And yet they're doing something. And then they want to flip the script because of fear based related reasons. They want to flip the script on me or on other people to make it appear or make things seem to be like things are a certain way. So it's a good idea for somebody to refrain from either doing something or not doing something. And realistically speaking, they need to get out of my life. They need to get out of everybody's life. They cannot dictate other people's lives. They have to understand. They have to use their brains since they have one. They have to use their brains since still because they still have a brain. They have to use their brain to understand, to realize, to get out of people's lives. They don't belong in people's lives, yet they have embedded themselves in people's lives. So, embedding themselves in people's lives, they're able to try to flip the script and try to manipulate things, make things seem a certain way when it's not a certain way. I don't belong to anyone. I'm an individual. Okay? All these nonsense groups, I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. I really don't know who they are. And I don't want to know who they are because they have nothing to do with me. If I want to know who they are, I'll want to know who they are, except I don't want to know who they are because they have nothing to do with me. I don't know them. I don't trust them. I don't know them. I don't want to know them. I don't want to trust them because they don't make sense. They're liars. I'm not a liar. I don't need to lie. There's no need for me to lie. So why would I lie? There's no need for me to lie. I have no reason to lie. So these groups are just basically interest groups. They want to basically flip the script. They want to basically change the narrative. They've done some type of wrong on my behalf, it seems like. So they want to basically make me be like them so they could justify their wrongdoings. That's all there is to it. It's not a mystery. There are mysteries. However, that's not a mystery. That shouldn't be a mystery. So, unless somebody is truth and walks that path of truth and continues walking that path of truth, then I realistically don't trust these people. Because here I am, I have no idea who I am. About 5 years ago, asleep, kept brainwashed, kept mind controlled in all types of sophisticated ways, uh, deprived of sleep, and so on and so forth. And something occurred. So I realized something happened, something clicked in my head that everything that was occurring in my life wasn't me, wasn't stemming from me. So where was it stemming from? I asked myself. What would I need to distinguish everything? What would I need to understand everything? And I arrived to an epiphany where I realized, okay, well, it starts with me knowing truth and what truth is. Me realizing what true knowledge is. Me realizing what life is. What all of this stuff is about. So, in doing so, in that epiphany that occurred in my head, I realized, okay, well, how am I going to find out what truth is, what true knowledge is? Well, first, I had to realize that what is it that is wrong? And based on the things that I realized that were wrong, for instance, something that is not good for you is wrong. So, what is something that is not good for you? What is that something that is wrong? I was smoking cigarettes. And so, me smoking cigarettes, I knew cigarettes was not good because I was always told cigarettes were not good. I knew cigarettes was wrong. In me stopping smoking cigarettes, because I knew what was wrong, I realized what else I was doing was wrong. And then another epiphany moment happened where I didn't know what truth was. However, I knew what was not truth. And what was not truth was something that was harmful for me. So something that was harmful for me was for me basically smoking cigarettes. And so that was wrong. And so I basically stopped smoking. And then me stopping smoking led me to realize something else was wrong. I stopped that too, led me to realize something else I was doing was wrong. I stopped that too, led me to realize something else I was doing wrong, stopped that too. And it was just like a domino effect of me stopping, reversing, straightening out, and tables turning to what was basically things that were wrong. So one thing led to another, and one thing leading to another. I gave up something, changes occurred. I gave up another thing, 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 changes occurred. While these changes were occurring, and while I was in the true path within myself, I was met with a bunch of groups, unknown groups that I have no idea who they are. Today I know who they are. They're just a bunch of liars. They're just a bunch of lack of understanding people that have no idea what reality realistically is, and had no idea what realistic truth was. Because if they did, there would be no reason for them to cause issues. So obviously, they had no idea what true knowledge was. They had no idea what all of this is. They themselves possibly were manipulated. They themselves were possibly sophisticated, brainwashed. I don't know. I do know that they are basically a bunch of liars, deceivers, manipulators, con artists, not aware of many, many aspects of reality. And yet made a bunch of blind decisions, limited decisions. So look, all this stuff is a long story. All this stuff I'll save for another time. It's not time for this stuff. Right now, realistically, what it's time for is me speaking in reference about the answers and me mentioning things to do with solutions. Because I could go on and on and on for a long time with what is it that I need to say. However, I believe that at this moment of time, all this stuff is just basically pointless. All this stuff does not make sense whatsoever. And what is occurring on this planet today. So I don't even believe that it's time for me to even say what I just said. That's why a bunch of things are off. There's a lot of things that are set up in place that are set in place to convince and make people believe all sorts of things, like they understand everything, to make people believe like everything is known. So in time, real stuff can realistically be known. There's a just in that. Except some people, in the midst of all that stuff, they take advantage of people. And that's a problem. They do so with people not knowing what true knowledge is. So ultimately, the liberation of anything will be true knowledge of the individual, the true knowledge of the group, the true knowledge of all people. The true knowledge of all people will basically save everyone from all sorts of problems that occur here on this earth. So, regardless of anything, whatever anybody tells you, just keep in mind that ultimately, what all this stuff is realistically about is finding the answer, knowing true knowledge, creating all things based on true knowledge, within self and outside of self. All whomever is embedded in people's lives, spying on people, hearing their thoughts, entering in their visions and in their dreams, all that stuff is realistically illegal. No one has the legal authority to literally go in somebody's head via visions, via thoughts, and try to tell somebody in a sophisticated way to do something. So all things need to be abundantly transparent in the flow of all time. If all things are true based, everything has to continue in a true based path. For that to occur, everybody has to basically partake in truth for all this stuff to occur. If one person is partaking in truth, the other person is not partaking in truth, that leaves room for errors. That leaves room for people to give excuses to one another and say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to partake in truth because the other person is also not partaking in truth. I'm not going to partake in truth because the other person is not partaking in truth." So there shouldn't be any reason, any excuses why people are not partaking in truth. Regardless, if somebody's not partaking in truth, it'll be a better idea for somebody to partake in truth than for somebody not to partake in truth. Nothing should be an excuse for people to say, "Oh, I'm not going to partake in truth," because someone so is not partaking in truth either. That's just illogical. It doesn't make sense. So people are just limited. People are stuck. They don't tend to connect the dots. They're not able to understand what is next. in the way that the calling is wanting people to partake in truth. So the calling is huge for people to be truth, to be not only truth, however, self evident truth, perfect truth. In not one aspect, however, in all aspects. Gain, gain knowledge of self and gain knowledge in outside of self. Knowledge is key. True knowledge is key. I'm not talking about just regular knowledge. I'm talking about true knowledge. Because there's a bunch of uh, like understandings that people call knowledge. However, it's just like a mix of knowledge, and it's just called knowledge. So what people have to realistically realize to do is realize that they have to be able to distinguish what is true knowledge and what is something that is just simply called knowledge that has realistically nothing to do with knowledge. Distinguishing mix of truth and lies is key in anything, whatever it may be, whether in visions, whether in thoughts, whether in words, whether in doings, whether in eating food, feelings, whether in what you believe, what you partake in, what you support, what you need, what you want, what you entertain and dwell in, what you create, what you buy, what you sell, all this stuff has to be distinguished. What is truth? What is lies? Any form of lies that exist here on this earth has to be taken out of reality. Why? Because it's junk food. The lies are like junk food, like I was mentioning earlier. The lies are junk food. The lies are things that are not good for you. They go against the body, they go against the soul. So same thing outside of self. There's a bunch of lies outside of self. They're like junk food. They don't belong in reality. Why? Because they're not good for you. They don't make sense. It's not. It's bad for the environment. So all this stuff needs to go away. Basically, anything to do with lies. Part of the lies is somebody basically having fun the incorrect way. Somebody may say, "Oh, what is an example of me having fun the incorrect way?" Well, look, if somebody, for instance, tastes something or enjoys something and has fun with tasting something, is that something that somebody's tasting have to do with truth? Does it make sense in the totality of everything? Or is it a violation, doesn't make sense, and is going against the totality of everything? So, for instance, if somebody is eating meat, one of the best topics of discussion, one of the most important topics of discussion, if not the most important. Eating meat is realistically not normal. If people understand everything correctly, and I do, the totality of everything that pertains to me, that occurred on my behalf, they would realize that eating meat is not normal. Eating meat in general is a sin, especially in the way that something is eaten. Somebody eats meat and has fun eating meat when they don't need to eat meat, for instance, and basically enjoys something that has nothing to do with enjoying something, because what they did was they violated a being that was alive to basically fulfill some type of a wrong pleasure, wrong way fun, wrong way doing. So that's a sin. It's in the wrong way that somebody's eating meat when they don't have to eat meat on another being's watch. So it's abnormal. It's not normal to eat meat. There's no reason for anyone to eat meat. If you ask me, there's realistically no reason for anyone to eat meat. You can't find me a specific reason and tell me why eating meat is justified. If someone can survive without eating meat, then there's no reason for somebody to eat meat to survive. So what is the reason to eat meat? Unless for survival situations. There is no reason. You cannot give me one reason that you need to eat meat unless for survival. Otherwise, all the reasons you give me are unjust reasons and nothing to do with reasons. You just call reasons, basically. Because reason has to do with truth, not lies. So it's a very good idea to understand and have knowledge and realize why it's not a good idea to eat meat. There's no reason to. You don't eat meat to survive, then you don't need to eat meat. If somebody needs meat to survive and cannot survive any other way, and some type of harm will be caused on some person not eating meat, then that's the only reason that somebody can realistically eat meat. And if somebody does eat meat, then that meat has to either be with technology, robot, the only just way, or the second just way, when the being is basically in caring hands, in good hands, has eaten good food, has fulfilled its mission in life, no hormones, and basically has fulfilled their mission and passed naturally on to the next stage of life. In doing so, passing naturally, the person that has to specific that specific person that has to eat meat, that needs to eat meat to survive, will make sense for that person to eat meat to survive. And I suggest for the person to basically be more important than the animal. What is more significant, the animal or the person? What brings more benefits into this planet? The animal or that specific person that is eating the meat? That also has to be counted. And so the only way to realistically eat meat that is just is you have to be a specific person that you cannot survive without eating meat. You have to eat meat to survive. You cannot survive any other way. Robots that create meat for you to eat meat, or the animal has to be basically passing naturally with all the requirements in terms of being treated amazingly, fulfilling its mission here on Earth, and passing naturally while living a long, luscious life. And you have like a general rule of thumb 30 minutes to an hour to basically eat that meat once the animal passes naturally. That's the only way that you can eat meat to survive. That is just. Any other way is a sin. Any other way is unjust. Any other way is the reason there are problems here on earth today. The sense of de-evolution is occurring. The form of de-evolution is occurring. All this stuff is from lack of sleep and facial feature temperament. So, anyways, the point of the matter is there are points to the matter, like you keep mentioning, and how if anybody, whatever they may be doing, they have to do with some type of point. They have to have some type of a purpose to do something. If people don't have a purpose in doing something, then you shouldn't be doing something, basically. That's what that equals to. Otherwise, your purpose is no purpose. Your reason is no reason. And it's not a good idea to live in a no purpose, no reason life. There is no point. So, what needs to be understood and distinguished is the fact that when somebody knows and learns true knowledge of self, that I've given these pointers to go off of, people have to realize, and not just this, everything I've ever thought, everything I've ever written, everything I've ever shared in my personal life, on my phone, my information, etc. All this stuff is public information for me, just to get the story straight. The only people I don't share my information with, and I decline to share my information with, are conscious antagonists and misusers of the truth. Everybody else, I'm sharing my information with, just so people can understand realistically what is true, what is not true. So I know this video that I made here today is mixed within itself in terms of true knowledge, in terms of people tampering, deceiving, in terms of people spying, in terms of animals, in terms of my own personal story within the story. However, that's the whole point. You see, this is what reality has arrived to be today. It's like this mix of this, 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 of all this stuff, and it's like this right now. So what needs to happen is everything needs to be distinguished, and in everything being distinguished, all things need to basically fit where they belong. And in doing so, in all things fitting where they need to belong, there can be accurate choices and decisions that people make to do with truth. Truth works in a way where it's 1 + 1 = 2, not in just one given aspect, however, in the totality of all things. So a bunch of things today here on this earth, like I mentioned, like everybody should know, is 1 + 1 = 5. -1 + 5 = 3. And we know that's not the answer. So you have basically that's occurring there, that's occurring there, and that's occurring there. This that's occurring here, this that's occurring here, and so on and so forth. You have an array of things everywhere, and all this stuff is basically just clashing on one another. It's not making sense. It's not working the way it needs to work. So even within myself, I'm explaining this video. I'm trying to mention some things. I'm realizing that that's exactly where life is today. A bunch of mixes of everything, of thoughts, ideas, visions, like I've mentioned. And all this point, the whole point is for all this stuff to be distinguished and all things fit where they need to fit. So then everything can basically go back to its purpose, go back to its origin, go back to where things belong. So there can be sense in everything. There won't be this continuous cancer-like thing where things are not making sense. And problems continuously keep occurring because things are not making sense. So people have no idea what they're doing in many, many aspects of reality. I have some type of idea. And one of the ideas that I have that I'm willing to share is the fact that people have to basically let go of all their lies within themselves to be able to understand what truth is. They have to experience, partake in the truth for them to realize and understand what truth is. In doing so, they will support the cause in balance returning on the face of this planet because that's ultimately what it's all about. For balance to return on this entire face of this earth. There is a huge lack of balance on this earth. And that is one of the biggest problems that we face today. The lack of balance that is stemming outside of ourselves is the same lack of balance that is stemming within ourselves. So usually, typically speaking, in general, whatever it may be, keep in mind that everything inside is basically outside. Everything outside is basically inside. There's a lot of connections here on this earth that are not connected the way they're supposed to be. So it's not about remaining stuck that way in this type of nonsense disconnection way. It's about for everything to be basically connected correctly, fixed correctly, restored correctly, understood correctly, distinguished correctly, and for everything to basically be in place where it belongs. Just like a puzzle piece, and what a puzzle piece equals to is basically how every single thing in this entire planet needs to be. Everything is a puzzle piece. So everything needs to belong like this together. Everything. There's not one thing that's not supposed to be this way. This will only be based on truth. This won't be based on lies. So if some people are trying to do this based on lies, it's not going to happen. Why? Because it won't make sense. If somebody's programmed and is lie-based toxic within oneself, one person that is toxic programmed within oneself that is not out of the toxicity, that is not out of the programs, cannot resonate, cannot connect with a person that is clean. It won't work, and you cannot force things. You cannot force things. You cannot force things to be a certain way because it's clashes that occur, it's mixes that occur, it's problems that occur. So people are basically forcing things to they're not getting something, so they're forcing things to get something, but they're not getting in the way that they're doing things because in the way that they're doing things, they don't know what they're doing, and they're basically all over the place. So in other words, it's not making sense for them to do something because they don't know how to do something based on truth because lack of knowledge. And so they're manipulating their way to receive something, to retrieve something, to get something. And it won't work that way. It'll just be temporary and they'll create a bunch of ripple effects of a bunch of issues happening and occurring here on this earth. When I'm being truth in all aspects of reality, I expect the same in return. If I'm not receiving truth in all aspects of reality, when I'm being truth in all aspects of reality, that is a violation that is paving way for nonsense things to occur. And basically, it's game over. So people know that fact. And I don't know what happens to some people's minds, some groups' minds. However, they basically are deceived in a moment of time based on nonsense agreeing. They're like, let's see what this will equal to if we compare this person to another person. Let's see if we do this. We'll maintain the truth. Everything will be like, with truth in general. However, let's just do something in these moments, in these glimpses, to see the difference in something, to see what the reaction will be, to see what something will be born. And let's see who will listen to us. Let's see who will not listen to us. Let's see how things will be, basically. That's a problem, okay? That's a problem. You're entertaining and dwelling in nonsense. That type of stuff is like nonsense curiosity, a waste of time. It's one of the violations. It's one of the basic principles that I mentioned for people not to do. Do not dwell in, do not entertain in any form of nonsense. Don't waste your time. Don't think, oh, let's see what this will be. No. You want to know what something will be? What people have to do is in partaking in truth and continuing in the path of truth, you will basically grow that truth, understand something without having to understand the other thing. That's one of the principles and points that I mentioned too. And one of the points and principles that I'm mentioning has to do with that fact. that if you want to partake in truth and understand truth and partaking in truth, you will basically understand everything without having to understand something in the opposite way. Because realistically speaking, you want to understand something in the opposite way without causing some type of damages, without some type of issues occurring. So there's no reason to, there's no point to, there's no purpose in doing that. So therefore, refrain from doing any form of non-reason, non-purpose, non-point thing. That's what people have to keep in mind. There's no point, there's no purpose in something based on truth. There's no point, there's no purpose. So based on truth, if it's not based on truth, there's no point, there's no purpose. Therefore, don't do it. Where's the calling? The calling is that everything has to be truth based. Everything has to be uh, based on not only truth, however, perfect truth, self evident truth, for all things to return back to its original state. So, one of the things that people have to realize is the fact that in returning back to balance is to be self evident truth. That's another thing. So, the part of the balance to return here on this earth is the fact that everybody has to be self evident truth. And not one aspect, however, in all aspects. So remember, if there's anything that's ever occurring here on this earth, and whatever I mention, I'm not just mentioning to those specific conscious antagonists that lack knowledge, that need to basically understand knowledge and partake in knowledge within themselves. However, all this stuff has to do with certain aspects. So I mentioned everything that I mentioned is to do with specific conscious antagonists and certain aspects within a person that basically is a violation, causing itself inside and outside of itself. So that is what the issue is. The fact that some people are judging a person based on one aspect, based on two aspects, not all aspects, the way things need to be. And so it's important to know all aspects, and it's important to make sure and ensure that any form of specific thing that's ever occurring to do with lies is stopped. That is what the answer is. Some people are doing a bunch of counts, keeping people in certain waves without anybody realizing what's taking place, so they can say, "Oh, this person's wrong. Oh, this person's wrong. Oh, it's justified for what we did to this person. For long we could do this to this person and get away with it. We could do this to everybody and get away with it." That's the liar's game. That's the nonsense's game that they played on me. They basically underestimated me. They kept me in waves without me being aware of anything. Why introducing a bunch of nonsense scenarios so they could basically justify their wrongdoings? These are dirty game players, man. They kept me in a bubble. They kept me unaware of many, many things. And what they did was they did a bunch of dirty nonsense games on my behalf. To use lie-based excuses, lie-based justifications to say, "Oh, that's why we did certain things." They never wanted to get they never wanted to get caught. And what is it that they did? And what they did is they basically lied, kept people in bubbles, had fun the wrong way, sinned, made people think that they're winning based on lies. And if that wasn't enough, once they got exposed, once they got caught, once everybody knew their game, then they want to turn around and do the same thing yet again in a different way this time. So these are dirty game players. They even show off who they are. So those noises I just heard around me, they even show off who they are. So these to me, in my book, in this lifetime, whomever partakes in this type of stuff, does this type of stuff, all should be aware of them. All should know who they are because I don't trust them. If they kept people in bubbles, if they kept me in bubbles, if they did this to their own, actually, I wouldn't even call it their own. That had nothing to do with me. They just call people their own. If they're able to manipulate this stuff and do this stuff to their own, then they basically are paving way to make them seem like that they're able to do this to anybody. For long, people believe their stuff, and for long, people uh, put up with it. In other words, if people don't believe their stuff, they don't partake in their stuff, they won't even put up with their stuff. So, anyways, the point of the matter is to know true knowledge. Most importantly, refrain from any politics, any form of games. Don't continue in a path of nonsense because continuing a path of nonsense is basically a lie, and any form of person that's continuing a path of nonsense is basically forcefully continuing in a lie-based way. And what they're doing is they're connecting people within themselves to themselves and basically keeping other people in this weird predicament. In other words, this way people are suffering because of them. And no one should be suffering because of them, basically. So nobody should be suffering because of specific nonsense, like I mentioned before. If there's anybody that's going to suffer, it's going to be them suffering, not whom they connected and drag people in the process with. If there's no one suffering, then there's no one suffering, especially no one suffering. That has nothing to do with these liars. Remember yesterday I was mentioning the fact that there's 10 people, those two play games within each other. They happen to infect the other eight. The other eight happens to be the population. Those two groups are those nonsensers. They're causing issues. Those two groups may not be two, maybe five, maybe 10, maybe 20. I don't know. Maybe 100, maybe a million. Doesn't matter. The point of the matter is that they shouldn't be causing any form of issues. They know that I'm aware. They know that everybody's aware. They know everybody's doing their part in whatever they're doing to make sure nonsense is not occurring. The majority of everyone. Based on the totality of my playouts in my life, I've understood in general that everybody is aware. Based on all things that were occurring to do with truth. Some people are just giving you impressions or making things seem like they don't know. However, don't be deterred. I know why certain people are not. Look, what I'm mentioning is the fact that a bunch of lack of understanding people are continuously putting the spotlight on them. When realistically, they have to get out of everybody's life. They don't belong in anybody's life. Therefore, they have to get out of everybody's life. They don't make sense to be in people's lives. The only way they've manipulated and convinced people that they belong in their life is they've gone in their minds with sophisticated technology, spied on people, and basically listen to people's thoughts, change their thoughts, change their perspectives, and put people together in a moment, in a place and time to make people believe that they belong together. However, it's just a form of conditioning. It's just a form of tick abuse, manipulations. And some people are not even with each other. They're just with each other because they can't, they need money. They hook people, you know? These nonsense are hook people, basically. I don't agree with that type of stuff. I don't do that type of stuff. There's no reason to do that type of stuff. That may have a purpose in specific instances to specific people, not to everybody, however. And so, all these sophisticated things that people have done, have manipulated, have controlled to make things appear and make things seem like everybody needs to be hooked is wrong, is false. No one in general needs to be that way. Only specific, I would say specific conscious antagonists. I would say whoever needs to be that way is these specific conscious antagonists. They're the ones that need to be hooked. They're the ones that need to be specifically watched. They're the ones that need to be specifically observed and heard. Everything that stems from them is what needs to happen to them. They've managed to flip the script. They've managed to make things seem otherwise, basically. So it's those specific conscious antagonists that are basically lie based, they have no idea what truth is. They're realistically the ones that need to be made sure and ensured that, realistically speaking, partake in truth for truth to return. Otherwise, they cannot be trusted ever. I for sure don't trust them. If I don't trust them, realistically speaking, no one should trust them. Why? Because it doesn't make sense for them to be trusted. They lie their way through things. And so I don't know how some people counted things, calculated things, connected things. However, it's not abundantly transparent to me. For long as something like that is not abundantly transparent to me, there's no trust. Nothing doesn't make sense that way, in the way it's supposed to make sense. So some people may say, "Oh, what is truth? That's my truth. That's your truth." lie-based stuff. There's no such a thing, okay? There's no such a thing. That's my truth. That's your truth. That's just lie-based. That's lack of understanding. Anytime you hear somebody tell you that's my truth, that's your truth. It's just a lack of understanding. Just keep that in mind. Why? Because think about it. And while you do think about it, to realize the difference between that's my truth, that's your truth, keep in mind the very fact that truth is only one. There is self-evident truth, and with that self-evident truth, there's many, many truths. However, what some people are doing is they don't even realize, they don't even know what self-evident truth is, and in not knowing what self-evident truth is, they are basically continuing in this mixed format of what truth isn't, to make people think that they know what the truth is. Any form of lies, anything that doesn't make sense is not truth based. So when somebody's eating junk food, they don't know what truth is. If anybody's partaking any form of physical or emotional harm, they don't know what the truth is. So while mentioning this stuff, I'm realizing some type of a weird predictive programming, this like futuristic nonsense playing out scenarios, making people seem or think certain ways and what certain things are occurring. This is illegal stuff. This type of stuff needs to be known who is doing what with these predictive programmings, because there's issues that are occurring. It's not accurate, in other words. These predictive programmings are not accurate whatsoever. And they have no business going people's lives, try to predict their fate or their play out of what will occur. There's a sense in that some things may make sense, and there's things in that that don't make sense. It's basically been lied to. The liars themselves have been lied to. The liars think that they haven't been lied to, that they're basically wrong. They have no idea what the truth is because they themselves have been lied to. They're a ladybug, a beautiful ladybug. So while I'm explaining this and mentioning this, what the funniest part of a lot of things is the fact that some people are still trying to convince me on the sidelines to make me believe all sorts of things. They're not true. Anyways, that's it for right now. I'm gonna continue this a little bit later. There's a bunch of things that I need to do. There are far more significant than what I'm doing right now. Even though this is one of the most significant things with that. Nothing is better than true knowledge. Nothing is better than distinguishing lies from truth. And nothing is better than partaking in truth. Nothing is better than making sure and ensuring that everybody does their part to take out all and any form of lies from within and outside of self. Nothing is better than for balance to return within and outside of self based on truth.